Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carrot Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1991 comedy drama titled Fried Green Tomatoes. Now, Fried Green Tomatoes runs for 2 hours and 16 minutes long. It is directed by John Avnet. It is produced by John Avnet and Jordan Kerner. The script was written by Fanny Flagg and Karol Sobieski. It is actually based off of the novel Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe, which was penned by Fanny Flagg. Let's see, the score was done by Thomas Newman, the cinematography by Jeffrey Simpson, and it was edited by Deborah Neal Fisher. And the stars of the movie are Kathy Bates, Mary Stuart Masterson, we got Mary-Louise Parker, we got Jessica Tandy. I'm not 100% sure if this was her final acting performance, but I guess, if there's a way to end your life and you want a decent send off before your grave, I don't think anybody could have done it better than Jessica Tandy. So, big salute to her. We also have on the list, we have Cicely Tyson. We have a very small acting performance from Chris O'Donnell. We have Stan Shaw, Gailard Sartain, Gary Basaraba, and Nick Searcy. So, Fried Green Tomatoes is generally a juxtapose of an emotional, tearful drama with definitely some light-hearted, comical moments that has sort of similar veins to more superior and somewhat less manipulative films like Steel Magnolias and Crimes of the Heart. To be honest with you, a lot of people may have liked this movie. I mean, it's got a lot of positive reception, especially from commentating sites like Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb gave it a lot of high marks and high accolades and heavy praises. And you know what? I'm not going to disagree with them on their account. Okay, I mean, I'm not going to say this movie was bad or anything at all, but I don't think it fully lived up to my expectations. And it's not that I'm a person who is of high standards. No, far from it. I appreciate the works and the efforts from filmmakers and what they do. They are there to provide us the entertainment, but also at the same time, I wanted to like this movie more, but there was a few things that just didn't sit very well in my perspective. I'm sure other people may disagree with me, and you know what? That's okay. I accept it. Everybody thinks differently. To each their own. But what makes this movie not live up to its expectations was that they tried to cover too much, which at the result gets very little accomplished. I mean, there is a time limit. I know you can't really cover everything that's based on the book, otherwise this movie will not be 2 hours long, but instead it'll be 4 hours long, and who the fuck wants to sit through a 4 hour long movie anyway? But the thing of the matter is sometimes less means more, and sometimes if you don't try to put too much into something, you'll actually get a lot more accomplished. Sure, we understand that friendship and bonding is a very important commodity, but it has a habit of pushing the envelope so much that the story it's trying to tell never is fully settled, and then we are left confused. The relationships portrayed tend to lack in being believable, and that we just have to take it like a pinch of salt. though the fans of this movie might be more accepting. Am I into these kind of movies? I mean, I like the bit of the montages from the past. I mean, there's two sub-stories. We have some issues that deal with the past, and it often segues into the more present tense or 1991 standards. So it is. I mean, I can't say modern because a lot has changed in the last 28 years. Things have things look differently, people think differently, people act differently, and maybe even to some extent people look differently. The performers, this is really what makes this movie standard, is that yes, the performers are what holds this movie together. And I think if it wasn't for such great performances by the ensemble, this movie would have just plain sucked. The performers are what holds this movie together, and they do everything in their power to keep us intrigued as they pour it to the audience splendidly. I had no problem with the performances. I thought the acting was overall really, really good. The acting chops are so powerful that they get their message across, even if they have to get a bit over their top to get the message across. And this over-the-top melodramatic stuff might be bothersome to others, but by the end, the morals are definitely etched in stone. The actors really go out and give it their all, and that's what really brings the marking system up. Let's see. Under the direction of John Avnet, Fried Green Tomatoes starred two hot actresses at the time. And what do I mean by hot? No, I'm not looking at body parts type of hot. What I mean by hot is like two people who were coming off of very successful movies in prior to this movie, and they once again delivered. What I'm talking about is Kathy Bates. I mean, she recently won an Academy Award for her role in Misery. And then you also have Jessica Tandy, who won an Oscar for her role in Driving Miss Daisy. One thing I have to give hats off to Jessica Tandy. She really knew how to sort of like disclose her life in a very positive way. I mean, here was a person, I mean, prior to movies like Fried Green Tomatoes and Driving Miss Daisy, I mean, Jessica Tandy knew how the best way to bring her send-off to a close. I mean, prior to these movies, Jessica Tandy has actually been in the acting business way back in the times, probably even way back even before my parents were born. Especially my father. My father, he's not, that young, but at the same time, Jessica Tandy's acting career might even go back even way before he was born. But she was never given the proper credentials that she truly deserved, because so obviously she was stuck in the shadows of all the great ones from the golden age of cinema, from your Marilyn Monroes to your Lana Turners to your Marilyn Dietrichs to your Greta Garbos to your Lauren Bacalls to your Rosalind Russells and your Judy Garlands. Those are the ones who were stealing the screen, not to mention Betty Davis. Jessica Tandy has always remained stuck in the shadows of those Hollywood greats. But now, as she was approaching her 80s, all of a sudden, that's when her career was starting to get noticed. That's when she was finally getting the fucking credit that she finally deserved. And it could not have come at a better time. Obviously, she was 80 years old and she was getting on in age and she didn't have a lot of time. But the thing is, she stuck around long enough, and voila, 1989, she wins an Oscar for Driving Miss Daisy. 1991, she gets, I think she was Oscar nominated in her performance. Only this time it was Best Supporting Actress, but still, hey, I gotta give hats off to her. She knew when her time was coming, and this is when she was starting to get noticed. And I gotta say, it's about damn time. Because she was just tremendous, not only in Driving with Daisy, but even here as well. In this movie, we have Kathy Bates. She plays the role of a lamented, middle-aged midwife by the name of Evelyn Couch, who's not pleased about her marriage and her life in Birmingham, Alabama. And as her only source of comfort is consuming candy bars. Obviously, her relationship with her husband is not very good. Not to say that the guy, Ed Couch, played by Gailard Sartain, it's not to say that he's been abusive to her, nor has he ever been mean to her, but it's just that they've been married for roughly 25 years, and yet the magic in their relationship has fizzled. He seems to live a routine lifestyle. He goes to work, he comes home, he reels in the dough. She's got dinner on the table. She was hoping for a little quiet time, just her and him alone. But instead of going to comfort her, he takes his dinner, puts it on a little table towel in front of the TV, eats his meal while watching his sports. No kisses, no hugs, no quiet moments together, nothing romantic. Just treats his place like it was a bed and breakfast, or like a hotel, and she's nothing more than just a glorified waitress. And she just feels very, very unhappy about it. She's just not too pleased with what has just transpired. And obviously she needs somebody or something to keep her occupied. So we have, just so happens that Ed's Aunt Vesta, who has been a resident in a old age hospital, or a hospital for the elderly, well, she's not doing too well. So Ed and Evelyn go off to visit Aunt Vesta. Obviously, Aunt Vesta does not like Evelyn very well. In fact, every time Evelyn tries to be on friendly terms with Aunt Vesta throws things at her. And so Evelyn is kind of like forced to sit in the waiting room. And this is where Jessica Tandy's role comes in. Jessica Tandy plays the role of an aging nursing home resident who goes by the name of Ninny Threadgood. And so Evelyn and Ninny eventually end up becoming friends. And Ninny then eventually communicates with her by telling her an extended anecdote that has some connection with her past. Bates and Tandy earn a myriad of awards and accolades for their respective performances, which is set in the present, but there's a lot of great side stories and subplots that deal with the flashbacks to Ninny's past, which also plays a major effect as the story progresses. And even I got to admit, the flashback story is about a sister-in-law of Ninny's is tells us about a one-time blossoming town called Whistle Stop, Alabama, which was once a very popular growing city due to one of the most popular hangout spots known as the Whistle Stop Cafe, where everybody would stop off to have their great dishes. And of course, one of their main dishes was fried green tomatoes. And I thought that the subplot told in flashbacks was just as much exciting to watch as the bonding between Evelyn and Ninny. Although they were still unknown at the time, Mary Stuart Masterson does a wonderful job as Iggy Threadgood, her supposed sister-in-law, a tomboyish type who comes to the rescue of her friend Ruth Jameson, played by Mary-Louise Parker, who, prior to them operating the Whistle Stop Cafe, Ruth was once a victim in an abusive relationship with her husband, Frank Bennett, played by Nick Searcy, while also confronting other issues such as racism, the KKK, male chauvinism, segregation, and of course being framed by Sheriff Grady Kilgore, played by Gary Basaraba, for Frank's death, only to later drop the charges against her. You see, after the death of Frank Bennett, they managed to take whatever wealth that Frank had and built a very successful restaurant in the town of Whistle Stop, Alabama. It was a very popular hangout spot with great hospitality, great food, especially fried green tomatoes. And the cafe was doing really, really well. But then of course, all good establishments don't last forever. Apparently, after Ruth's death from an illness, the finances were starting to pile up, and then eventually the store had to end up being filed for bankruptcy. And then, once the establishment became defunct, then all of a sudden the town of Whistle Stop, Alabama, is now a ghost town. And what I mean by ghost town, I don't mean like spooky ghosts. I mean, it's just that people stopped coming there, and suddenly nobody wanted to make residence there anymore. And that's pretty much like what the story was about. If there's anything that kind of disturbed me a little bit, it would have to be probably the way how they handled Frank Bennett's death, which is actually the one that kind of made me feel a little bit at a bit of unsettling. It was a very unsettling the way they handled Frank Bennett's death. I'll make no mistake about it. I do not really care about the character Frank Bennett because he was such a horrible individual. Yes, he kind of played off as the villain in this story, make no mistake about it. He was abusive, he was tormentive, he was just a lousy excuse for a human being. And even that's an insult for people who are lousy excuses for human beings. But all kidding aside, I mean, and aside from that, he was also a member of the Ku Klux Klan. So, if there was anything that would have been more satisfying, was yes, he deserved a comeuppance. I mean, make no mistake about it. I would have been satisfied if he would have, got arrested by Sheriff Kilgore and was given a restraining order or to spend a substantial period in jail and then eventually get evacuated from the town of Whistle Stop. That I would have been much satisfied with. But instead, he gets hit in the head with a frying pan. He gets knocked out, but he then accidentally hits his head on the door of his truck. Well, okay, it was an accident, and I guess karma got the best of him. And I would have also may have accepted the fact that it could have been just declared as an accident, which originally it was. He didn't die on purpose. He died by accident. I don't know if it was the impact of Pidgey's frying pan, or if he hit his head on the truck, which was an accident, and very acceptable. I would have took that. It was an accident, and maybe in some ways the bastard deserved that. He deserved some comeuppance. I would have just took that as an accident and all that. But instead of just admitting to the police that yeah, we killed Frank Bennett, but it was an accident. No, instead they decided to cover it up by pushing his truck into the water and then taking his dead corpse and making him into a barbecue. That's right. They went out, took his corpse, and went cannibalistic on him. Now, I don't know if this was played off as for humor and all, but when the sheriff came to town to try one of their dishes, the sheriff didn't even know that he was actually eating human flesh. I just thought it was just a little bit disturbing and a bit surreal the way they handled his death, which in some ways seems a little absurd. Why couldn't they just leave it as it was an accident? And then they could have just buried him. But instead of burying him, they took his corpse and they cooked him. That's just something I couldn't really swallow too much. And I don't know, it made me sick to my stomach for a bit. Yeah, he deserved some kind of justice, but I think that was just a little too exaggerated. Anyways, let's move on. Mary-Louise Parker, who at the time was only known for her role in the AIDS-themed movie Longtime Companion, was effective in her performance as the long-suffering Ruth who found comfort with Iggy when she's had enough of Frank's wrath. They definitely take her belongings and helps run the business Iggy operates in the abandoned town of Whistle Stop, Alabama. Although this movie was based off of the 1987 novel Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe by Fannie Flagg, she also definitely gets credit for the screenplay, as well as from Avnet, the director, and Karol Sobieski. This definitely was the directorial debut for Avnet, who before served as a producer in the 1983 movie Risky Business with Tom Cruise. And he also directed the 1986 TV movie Between Two Women, which starred Farrah Fawcett and Colleen Dewhurst. But the thing is that what Rambling Rose succeeded, that Fried Green Tomatoes failed, was the lack of handling the writers and the directors had on the script. It just seems that Avnet loosely gives Bates the green light to overdo it with her melodrama. And sometimes, yes, she tends to overdo it. It's like, come on. I was thinking, I guess Kathy Bates thought she found a formula when she played her Ann Wilkes character in Misery as a lovable, eccentric, but somewhat unpredictable character. Here we find her once again overdoing it with the melodrama, especially at the beginning. The script is offering its audience scenes that weren't a necessity, let alone saturated with dishonesty. There's the courtroom scene that is times a bit ridiculous to watch, and the outcome is predictable as our heroes actually go to courts and the officials just give in. Then we get an ending that is just really hard to watch, and then he explains the whole gruesome way in which Frank died. And then we are led to believe that someone is dead, only to reveal that they're really not. So is Itchy Threadgood still alive? Or is she dead? We're all led to believe that she died. But then at the end, in an unexpected and not unnecessary twist, we're all led to believe that Itchy Threadbare is still alive. There's even a possibility that Ninny Threadgood is Iggy herself. So there is some conspiracy theory to believe that Ninny Threadgood is just Iggy, just retelling her story. Of course, this story was supposed to sort of inspire Evelyn to actually become a better person, but at the same time, not just a better person, but also her husband Ed to also become a better person too. In the case of Evelyn, she is now going from being kind of like a submissive, mousy type into a stronger, more confident female character. I mean, she eventually ends up destroying their private room so that she can get Minnie to leave the nursing home and to live out the rest of her years, or to live out the rest of her days at their place. And then you have her now also getting a job selling kind of like Mary Kay products. Yeah, she eventually, and now she is just as much of a breadwinner as her husband. And as for her husband's sake, he now has to sort of realize that he has to, become a much more lovable, caring husband. And that when it comes to dinner time, they're supposed to sit and eat dinner together like a real married couple. So she's not gonna be like treated like an inferior to him, but an equal. And that's kind of like what inspired Minnie to tell this story to Evelyn. And I think that it's this budding friendship between Evelyn and Minnie that helps turn Evelyn's life around. Though
it's dangerous. It's too deep, it's dangerous.
Not the worst movie ever made, Kathy Bates eventually tones down in the later scenes, showcasing that she can be entertaining to watch and can be subtle when given the chance. Tandy, though, advanced in her age, is still astoundingly effective and shows that her age will not slow her down. And even though she's been acting since the golden age of cinema, her latter years have truly been the best. And through all of the red herrings, there is still plenty to like about the movie. Like I said, this is not the worst movie I've ever seen, but it's still definitely not anything I would regard as a classic. So, I guess if I was to give a scale out of 10, I would definitely give Fried Green Tomatoes a 7. I mean, like I said, it has a lot of flaws, but is that even though it has a lot of flaws, it's still very effective in its storytelling. And even though it has a lot of flaws, it's still very, very effective in its storytelling. I liked the flashback subplots, the stories in the flashbacks, especially from the performances of both Mary Stuart Masterson and Mary-Louise Parker. They added great sub-stories evolving around them. The stories evolving around Evelyn and Minnie were also very, very effectively executed. And I guess you could say I highly recommend this movie, but I just don't see it as an instant classic. But, it's just a matter of opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion just as much as everybody else is. To each their own. So, if you liked the movie, the more power to you. If you didn't like the movie, the more power to you. I have more leniency towards liking the movie more than hating it, but it's just that there was just quite a bit of flaws that just didn't sit very well. So take it as it comes. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And now we'll be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Ryder saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.